Hello and welcome back to the Macca's Talk Hockey podcast, a podcast where normally me and my brother Charlie talk about English ice hockey, specifically the NIHL. But today I'm joined again by Dan, and Dad, you've joined us as well. Charlie's decided to go to the gym, otherwise he wouldn't have been able to fit it in. So yeah, it's going to be a bit of a quieter one today, lads.
Yeah, it's quite already.
Yeah, it's just a bit quieter, not as loud. Dad, how are you doing?
Yeah, Charlie said to me, I've got to mention Malazinski 15 times, okay, in his
Okay.
absence, all right?
Well, I'm as the host, I'm gonna say not today. Not about Malas today. Dan, you doing
No.
all right? Obviously you weren't here last weekend, but you doing all right?
Yeah, I'm all good. I'm all good, thank you. Feels
Oh,
weird not being in an hockey rink
I
every
know, I
weekend.
know. Well, there is hockey on at the moment. The GB, well, the Tour World Championships is on. Before we get into that though, we have got a special interview with Rupert Quiney, who played for Guildford, he played for the Cardiff Devils, and he played for Streatham as well. And he is now a personal trainer at Ozone, which is pretty cool. So I interviewed him for my final year project, and it turned out it was actually a really, really good interview. So we're going to use it in this episode as well. So we'll cut to that after we've talked about all the transfers, all the re-signings, and GB as well. And we'll start with that. We all watched the GB versus Canada game, and I think everyone before the game thought GB were going to get smashed because Canada's team is full of NHL players. I think it's literally an NHL roster. And Dad, Kirk got the ball rolling, and we scored first. Wow, we
Well,
scored first. It got disallowed, didn't it?
you did say we were sitting watching it, and you said, wouldn't it be fantastic if GB score first, and then literally you get the goal, and then it's scrubbed off, and you just think, oh man, that was a choker, an absolute choker. Um, but yeah, they ploughed on, didn't they, after that, and then got another chance and took it really, really well. So yeah, it was a good game to watch. To be fair, I anticipated Great Britain getting hammered, but hey, credit where credit's due. They did well.
Yeah. Dan, I think it was goaltender interference. I've watched a lot of NHL this season, and even if it's just a tiny touch on the goalkeeper, it is goaltender interference. So I think it was quite rightly washed off. But good karma come back for GB, and it was a snipe from Liam Kirk. It had to be Kirk, didn't it?
Yeah, he's shot. His shot is unreal. You can really tell like he's obviously been away from Britain because the stuff that they work on overseas and obviously in Europe and America and stuff is totally different stuff. Like the skating, he's so good at holding the puck and
Yeah.
shooting. It's just one of them things that you just over here you don't really get the facilities to learn that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It would be great if they did have it over here one day, but obviously you got the ozone as well. That's coming on really well with the pep training and stuff.
Yeah.
Obviously it's the first time pep's ever been used in Europe
Yeah.
in there, so it's always going in the right direction. And fingers crossed it will open up more areas.
Yeah, Dad, I was very shocked with GB. I don't know whether I think it was a mix of both. I don't. It was obviously Canada's first game. Those
Yeah.
NHL players have never played together, but it's GB haven't really spent much time together, and I thought we shut them down really well and kind of shocked Canada. We actually won the last period as well, and it was a beautiful
Yeah.
goal from Ben O'Connor. So I think we really shocked them, didn't we, Dad?
We did. I thought all the way through the game, you're thinking Canada are going to go up two or three gears here, and suddenly, we're going to be, 5 or 6 goals down. But it never happened, and I think we scrapped well. I mean, ironically, in that first period, we were almost like two shots, two goals. And then one got scrubbed off. But yeah, I thought they battled hard. Great Britain's second goal was
Oh,
excellent. It was fantastic.
it was.
And actually, his facial expression when he scored the goal, going back to the bench, was brilliant. It was almost like I just can't quite believe I've done this backhand against Canada.
Yeah.
And fair play, fair play.
It was a lovely dish from Kirk, and Ben
Yeah, it was.
O'Connor
It
just
was.
casually going
Yeah,
through Owen
yeah,
Power, one a
yeah,
top draft pick in the NHL, and then
yeah,
shelving it backhand. It was
yeah,
it was quite special, and I
yeah.
thought I'd shout out a few players. The first one, former Wildcats player Sam Jones. I thought he did really well at the back.
Yeah,
Ollie Betteridge, another former Wildcats player, and Cole Shudra as well. He come out a few
yeah,
ships.
yeah.
Dad, when he ran into the goalkeeper. Do you remember that one? I love that though. I love that. There were some big hits flying around. You
Yeah.
talked about that big one from Ben O'Connor, Dan.
Mm.
The one at the end, though, I'm sorry, Michael Bunting, he's a bit of a moaner in the NHL, and I thought that was a clean hit from Ben O'Connor.
Yeah.
Do you think, Dan?
Yeah, well, I saw it on the on Twitter. I mean, you got to finish your hits.
Yeah.
I mean, you're in the NHL, mate.
Yeah, and as well, we didn't mention it for that goal which got chalked off. Kirk absolutely bodied
Yeah.
Tanev as well,
Yeah.
and
Mate.
Tanev is a rough guy in the NHL, and Kirk's just absolutely bodied him. And also shout out Josh Batch. He had a lot of
Yeah.
minutes. He was defending their top line. Connor Bedard did score two. But I
What a
thought we
player.
handled it quite well. We won't talk about the next day. GB did get battered 8-0. I said to Dad, I literally said straight after that Canada game, I think Finland are going to smash GB because they've just
Yeah.
given it everything against
Yeah.
Canada. They've prepared the whole time for Canada, and then Finland go and score eight. Jackson Whistle, though, I thought he was really good
Yeah.
on
He
against
was
Canada
on
as
point.
well.
Yeah, he was on point.
Right, that's the GB talk. They have got a lot more games. Unfortunately, all the GB games are not on YouTube, which is a bit frustrating.
Yeah.
So all the other games are there. We've been watching every one we can, haven't we, Dad? So good luck
I
to
do think
the
that is frustrating. I think as
yeah,
a mainstream sport, just because it's GB, it's not free on YouTube. But most other games are, and I
yeah,
think either sponsor the game properly or not at all.
yeah. I agree.
If you want to push this game forward, do it properly, not just say, oh, we're just going to cherry pick the odd game that we're gonna put on, which was really frustrating, really.
Especially because I thought the Canada game was actually a really, really
Yeah,
good one as well. So
yeah, yeah.
yeah, good luck to the rest of GB for their games. Let's go on to the league that we follow then, the NIHL. And the first signing I've got written down is probably the biggest one of the week. Is Jason Hewitt is back to the whole Seahawks. Well, back to the Seahawks. He used to play for the Pirates back in the day. Dan, I'll start with you. That is some signing, considering they lost Toner and Finn Ulrich as well. That is some way to replace him.
Yeah, 100%. It was, you sort of saw things about it like through the season and stuff, through the off season, all the rumors going around. Then obviously now it's finally come out.
Mm.
Yeah, it's a big signing for Hull. He's obviously a fan favorite around that place from the Pirate days. He obviously loved it there. I mean, I was listening to the Behind the Curtain podcast, and he said obviously if there wasn't the COVID, he'd probably still be in Hull to this day. So it's not like he left on bad terms, and I always think that's a good thing. Never end with bad terms with players because you never know when they might come back again.
Yeah.
And it looks like this season is going to be a really big season for Hull. They seem to be wanted to make a statement. Now they've sort of been in the league, I think their third season coming up.
Yeah.
So they're going to this season is going to be really big for them, and they're going to want to be pushing for sort of every trophy they can.
Yeah, I expect them to make a few more big name signings as well, just because of the roster they're building up. Dad, Jason Hewitt, obviously, he wasn't a fan favourite from the whole fans last season. I think they were booing him, chirping him. Some of the whole players as well. Barmer, I know, was pushing him about. But what I loved is that Barmer put straight on his Twitter how he loves that Jason Hewitt's now on his team. And I think that just shows you the characters they've got in that whole dressing room.
To be fair, he is a player, isn't he? He frustrates you when you play against him. He gets under the skin. Sometimes he loses it, but he gets under the skin and he gets on your nerves. And he's probably he's found his motivation again now. Sheffield weren't fantastic at the back end of last season, and they're going through a restructure. So to go back to where your heart is really at Hull, he'll be wanting to fly out the blocks when they start.
Absolutely. And wow, they've already got Sobchak, Svek, and Chamberlain. They've then got Hewitt as well. I don't know how Matty's going to choose the lines. He's got a good headache to choose the lines because you got Bonner as well. I forgot that. I'm Salem if he re-signs. So he's got a very good headache with the lines. Another big re-signing and a player who I'll admit I thought could have gone to another team like Milton Keynes is Bradley Bowering. And obviously, Dan, he scored that ridiculous penalty shot, which literally kept the Peterborough Phantoms alive. And he is staying with the Phantoms, which I think is absolutely huge.
Yeah, I mean, I've said it how many times on this podcast, but keeping young defensemen
Yeah.
is so key because they're so hard to come by. And a player like that is definitely hard to come by. The way he's so composed, he holds the puck well, plays out from the back so well,
Yeah.
and obviously being underneath Slava as well. I mean, he's literally in a perfect place for progression, and I can definitely see him going even further than last season.
Yeah, Dad, he is very skilled. He's still really, really young. He seems like he doesn't feel the pressure at all, and I think that showed in Coventry. I'll be honest, if he keeps progressing, I could genuinely see him being like a Reece Kelly stepping up to the Elite League because he's got that much talent.
If you think that the final memory of him last season was that penalty in the playoffs, and boy, the audacity to score like that and the pressure of a young player, and you just thought, the world is watching in our little league, and probably there's a few teams thinking, do you know what, we would love him to join our club, and to stay at Peterborough, good on him.
That is a statement.
It is, absolutely. Yeah.
And it's a big statement, Dan, because they did lose two players. Jordan Marr and Tyler LaBouche are not returning. So the goalie tandem, which they had at playoffs the whole of last season, the last few seasons actually, is not going to be returning. Dan, did that shock you actually? That kind of came out of nowhere, didn't it?
Yeah, I mean, sort of both of them at once as well. Like it's sort of weird to see both goalies go at the same time. Normally, you sort of try and keep one of them, but obviously things might have come up in their personal life and stuff. But it's going to be interesting the way they go because obviously we've been talking quite a lot, and we sort of know the way Slava thinks, and I could see him going up the import goalie route.
Yeah, I could see him doing
and I'm
it.
all for it. I love that. I would love to see an import goalie back in our league. I think that could be exciting for Peterborough. If it's anything like we were saying, like Ozins was a few seasons ago, I think it's definitely something to look forward to because he was unreal.
Dad, they had quite a cut-out roster last season. The back end of last season, they're missing Spears, Susters, Serenis, and they still managed to get the job done. I genuinely think if Padalecki does move on, bringing in an import goalkeeper would actually not be a bad shout, because goalkeepers are so hard to come by in this league, aren't they? Well, top goalkeepers. And with Jordan Marr leaving, I'm sure he's got a plan for where he's going to be going, and it was the right time to move, and he's ended it on such a high. But import goalie, it just makes sense, doesn't it?
I mean, Slava knows what he's doing, doesn't he? You don't make these statements, virtually within 2 weeks of the playoffs, where Jordan Marr had an absolute cracking playoffs again. A statement game, and to make an announcement like that early doors. You don't make statements like that without a plan already in place. Import goalkeeper probably, and probably another new import coming through the door as well. Slava's rebuilding. He'll keep some real core players again, and just develop around it again, and. They'll be in the top half again, and probably the team that you don't want to face in the cup.
Yeah, exactly that. And they not people doubting them, but they're never the favourites going into these competitions, and the team just manages to get through them and just win some trophies every season. So that is definitely incentive for other players to join as well, especially younger players. And I can see why Brad Barron has stayed, because Slava puts the trust in all these young players. So, interesting news coming out of Peterborough. Let's move on to Leeds then. So they announced that Colvin was going to be leaving. He was more of a depthy player, wasn't he, Dan? He covered now and again for injuries. I thought he was a pretty good depthy player to have. I think he'd get in quite a few teams, but he has gone back to Invicta. So he's gone to the league below. I'm sure he wants a top-line role. But they did announce that Ollie Endicott was coming back. We know what Ollie's about. He is a grinder. He'll get a lot of more points as well. His points total this season last season compared to the season before, he much improved, and I can only see him getting better, Dan.
Yeah, I mean, last season was a really good season for him. He sort of I think obviously he said it to you guys and stuff, but he's sort of got a different role this season.
Yeah.
He's out there for the big moments. He's obviously in the. I think he was on the second line, was he? Second line,
He
a
was
bit of top line.
Yeah, he played second line, top line, and some power play minutes all across this season. But then he also played third line to the back end of the season. So he's the perfect player to have throughout the squad.
Yeah, and they're the players you want. The ones that don't mind going in the big situations, going in the grinding situations, shutting down the game situations. He can do it all, and yeah, players like that are always going to do good under a coach like Aldridge as well. Because
Yeah.
I mean, he's going to have no complaints with that, and I'm sure he'll work with him through the off season. Obviously, he's been with Leeds for quite a while now, so he sort of knows the ins and outs of Ollie. And yeah, he's going to be working alongside of him, and it's not the worst coach to have alongside you, is it?
Oh no, he's one of the best in the league.
He's a popular guy within the Leeds team. You know, you watch the Leeds team when they're starting the game and they're coming out back onto the ice. It's Ollie Endicott who's the first man there,
Yeah,
high fiving
right.
and touching gloves, and at the end as well. So you know, he's obviously a real core player within the dressing room as well to in that little team that's motivated. So yeah,
Absolutely. And another one they've signed, and arguably this is a huge signing. Not just 1 year's, 2 years. Matt Howler has re-signed with the Leeds Knights. Dan, he's for me top 5 players in the league. He's the most dangerous player for me coming off the rush, just how quick he is. Dad, I always mention to you how he just turns on a sixpence and can maintain that speed so quickly. And then he's also got a laser of a wrist shot as well, Dan, which we saw in Coventry. That is a phenomenal signing. And I'll be
Yeah,
honest, I didn't know if he was going to stay in Leeds, whether he'd try and get an elite league again, whether he'd go to another team, but he's got a home in Leeds, hasn't he?
yeah. He's also got another attribute that I love in players, like Colby. He's so strong on his
Yeah.
edges, and he's so strong on his skates. Like he's not the biggest guy,
Mm.
and he's not like bulky. You know what I mean? But it's so hard to knock him off the puck.
Yeah.
Like you see, like him going to the corners, and you're like, oh, he's going to get hit here. And then all of a sudden he turns and he muscled off like Griffin, and he just come out with a puck. And it's
Yeah.
like you don't know how he does it. But players like that, obviously, I don't play, but you can see it's frustrating to play against
Yeah.
like Howlett, like players like that, because you're just
Yeah.
like, what can you do against a guy like that?
Yeah. And you could see players get wound up, and he actually can play that ratty
Yeah.
game as well,
He's a
Dan.
bit chippy, yeah.
Yeah, you can see him playing that chippy game sometimes. He's done that against Swindon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you say?
Yeah, it's just one of them. It's just one of them players you just hate because he's so good at everything.
He's a player which you don't like playing against, but you'd love him
Yeah,
on your team, and you'd
yeah,
take him in
100%.
any team. And I don't know what his aspirations are, but I'm sure that he's probably still trying to get elite league. Maybe I don't really know. I haven't spoke to him, but he's definitely got the speed and the power, and just he's so quick. And I'm surprised he didn't get as much minutes and points as in the Elite League, because he is, for me, one of the best players in this league. So, very lucky Leeds to have him again for another 2 seasons. Let's move on to another big signing for the Tigers, which is a 2-year deal. It's actually 2 players who got 2-year deals. Firstly, we'll start with Rhodes Mitchell-King. And he had a big role at Coventry. I thought he was very solid. He actually cleared the puck off the line, which didn't cross the line. But we won't talk about that in this episode. But yeah, Dan, that's another big signing for Telford, isn't it?
Yeah, I really like Rhodes Mitchell-King. He's another young guy, another young defenseman. Obviously, like I say, it's really good to get them locked in,
Yeah.
them young D-men. Again, under Watkins, like another coach, he's just so good for progressing players.
Yeah.
And you can see why these young players are choosing to stay on for these multi-year contracts, because it's for the best side. It's for the best for yourself. You're with this coach. Obviously, he knows you really well. He knows how you play. He knows what situations you're best in, and it's just, why wouldn't you resign? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Obviously, even if you love the club, you always got to think of yourself as well. You've got to think of your selfish moves as well. And I mean, being under a coach like that, Slava, Aldridge, Watkins, all of them players they've got a track record for, and all ex players as well. So they know the scenarios, they know how to play.
Yeah.
And it's just a bit of a track record that all these young players are sort of signing these multi-year contracts with all these coaches, and you can't really make it up.
Well, you've seen it with Billy Thorpe as well. We spoke to him
Yeah.
last week. He signed a 2 year with Peterborough because he's getting the ice time and he's improving. And Dad, another player who signed a 2 year with Telford is Brad Day. I thought he was absolutely ridiculous in the playoffs. He just seems to turn up when it comes playoffs, didn't he? And I know Telford got unlucky in that semi-final, but he had a really, really good playoffs and back end of the season, didn't he?
Yeah. He did, and I think again, you want to build from the back, don't you? And
Yeah.
to be able to get that solid keeper in early doors, and to get some young D in as well, I think is a real positive. I mean, the other thing, signing a 2 year contract, going back to Rose Mitchell King, is the fact that the league is only going to get stronger, so they're going to get a lot more and more minutes. And actually, you've seen how the league has progressed with quite a few elite players coming back down to us, and actually improving the skill levels and the strength and the speed of the game. So for our young players, again, we might be thinking, oh, when could they go up to the elite? But actually, the league is actually developing them really well because it's getting stronger each year. And I've no doubts next season will be strong again, and they're going to need Brad Day on top form.
Yeah, you're seeing a lot of teams in the league now re-signing their goalkeepers. Hepburn for Solway, Headley for Milton Keynes, Brad Day. It will be obviously be interesting. Oh, so Mostra and McLaughlin as well. Gospel,
Curling
obviously.
as well.
Curling, yeah. So there's only a few more teams which actually need to re-sign goalies or get goalkeepers. So it just shows how important the keepers are to the team. Because as you said, Dad, you kind of build your team from the goalkeeper. And that's exactly what Aaron Nell said. He said he'd re-sign Mar as soon as he could because you build from Mar. So yeah, I think that's a huge signing for Telford. We know how good Brad Day can be. The last couple signings then, Alderson has signed for Solway. He had a bit of a mixed season last year, didn't he, Dan? He got a couple of injuries. I think he got a ban as well because he just is a solid player. And you know what Dops are like. You got to be careful. But it is a really good signing. And if he can stay fit throughout a whole season, I think he can be a 40, 50-point player.
Yeah, I mean, before he came to Solway last year, he had like, I think 3 years or something in America.
Yeah, he did.
So
yeah,
you obviously, it's going to take a bit of time coming back into the British game. And obviously, he did have that little link with Belfast as well. I'm not sure he played any games for them, but
he got this massive injury for a year, so he's obviously come back, got a few niggly injuries here and there. But if he could stay fit, like he has got the talent.
He's an exciting player to watch. I know he likes to throw his body around. He's obviously got he's quite a big guy as well.
Yeah.
And a player like that for Solway is perfect because what do exciting players like that get you? They get you fans.
Yeah.
And that's what they're going to be wanting to grow their fan base. Gets you fans in the arena. You're getting excited to watch a guy like this play, and he's going to be loving it. He's probably one of them players that gets spurred on from the fans as well. He's probably a bit of a fan pleaser. But yeah, fingers crossed he can stay fit next season and sort of properly go for like a breakout year for himself.
Yeah, exactly that. You see, as you said, Dad, these young players, they're wanting to prove themselves and improve themselves as well. And the final one, who arguably for me should have got Young Player of the Year for Milton Keynes. Rutkiss got it, which we were all a bit confused about, and we love Rutkiss. But I think Max Stewart, he had a really, really good improvement last season. He got a lot of points. He fit on some of those top lines as well. And when they had some injuries, he really stepped up. He signed for Milton Keynes. So, yeah, a really nice signing for Milton Keynes. And you can see why they want to re-sign there, can't you?
Yeah, exactly. He did the business for him, didn't he? He came up with some big goals. A gritty player, just got on your nerves as well. So yeah, he's a solid signing for Milton Keynes.
Yeah, and that is pretty much it for the signings. As I said, we mentioned GB earlier. I think they've still got to play the likes of Czech Republic, Switzerland, which has plenty of NHL players. So yeah, as I said again, they have actually been really, really good games. You get to see a lot of NHL players. Sweden, they're my little tip. Me and Charlie have been talking. They've got a very, very good defense.
They're unreal.
Yeah, they've got Hedman, Darlene, Gustafsson in there, and then Kemp. Like they've got a sick team. So they're my underrated pick to win the World Championships. Should we get on to the interview then with Rupert? Thank you very much for listening. And we'll send it over to Rupert. Rupert, thanks for joining me. First of all, how are you doing now? I know I just asked you then, but how are you doing now after hockey since being retired?
Yeah, good. I'm very fortunate to still be involved in the game, more on the strength and conditioning side. So,
Yeah,
um, yeah, it's kind of a blessing that I I don't have to get out on the ice and
yeah,
potentially risk injuries or spend lots of time away from my family and things like that. But I still get to help players. I still get to have a positive impact, and I get to hang around the gym with them and stuff like that. So
yeah.
it's a pretty cool existence for me, I must admit.
Nice one. Going back to the start then, what kind of got you into ice hockey? Because it's not one of the main sports in the UK, but was it did you see some fights or was there any physical, did you like the physicality of it? What kind of got you into hockey?
No, it was when so my dad played,
Yeah.
so there was he always says that he was like there's sort of debates on who was the best player in the family because he like the Peter Quiney is on Elite Prospects and Hockey DB and all that sort of stuff because he played for Streatham back in the 70s, 80s.
Yeah.
Played for a few other teams in the late 80s, early 90s, and then had a big time away from the sport.
Yeah.
He's so I think he initially retired at 33 when the old Streatham team folded.
Okay, yeah.
And then they had a comeback in 2003,
Yeah.
which sort of formed the team, which is now the Streatham Redhawks. And he was 43 years old, and he was approached by Adam Goldstone,
Yeah.
who sort of was the main guy that kickstarted the team to see if he'd come out of retirement. So he had a 10-year gap, and then played for another 3, 4, 5. Yeah, I think he was playing still when he was 48 or
Oh
something.
wow.
Yeah, so yeah, it's very much in my blood. It's just it's sort of thing when you grow up sort of a part of it with it being such a key part of your family life and things like that. And then, anytime we're hanging out with like my parents and family friends and stuff like that, they're all in
Yeah.
hockey circles. It's just you just naturally gravitate towards it. So
Nice one. And have you always been quite tall? You're obviously, it says on Elite Prospects, you're 6'4", you're in the gym, you're quite built. Were you always quite big for your age back then?
no, no,
Really?
well, I was a really big kid, like young kid, but I
Yeah.
was actually a very late maturer.
Yeah.
Um, so it was quite interesting. All through my junior hockey life, I was sort of very much sort of average to maybe slightly undersized because
Yeah.
when you have in junior hockey, the age groups are 2-year age groups. So say if I'm like a first year under 16 with second year under 16s that have all sort of hit their adult height already, and I'm still a million miles away from it. Um, yeah, so like it being big or something like that was not something that I grew up with in
Okay.
in in hockey. Um, it kicked on for me when I was about 16, 17, and then
Yeah.
that's when I it was my turn to have a big growth spurt. By that point, I was already playing senior hockey,
Yeah.
and that sort of springboarded me to then have um, a much to sort of overtake certain players development wise
Yeah.
and is like I work with tons of young players now,
Yeah.
and I actually believe it's advantageous to have a later growth spurt in that regard
Okay.
because just to keep up, like it's kind of you sink or swim with how good you are, but
Yeah.
to keep up at that level when so many other players are physically dominant just because of maturation, you have to develop better skating ability. You have to be smarter. You have to figure out other ways to play. And
Yeah.
but then when it's your turn to take that step and develop as an athlete and to mature, you're just a much more well-rounded player.
Yeah.
It at the end product. So
I get what you mean.
um,
Yeah.
that's kind of how I felt like it happened with me. I definitely wasn't 6'4" and 110 kilos at like 16 years old. I was a million miles away from that.
Do you think being thrown into the men's league at quite a young age really benefited you to kind of kickstart your career and get used to that men's league? Because you see some young players now, they don't quite get the opportunities at that young age, but it sounds like you got it at 16, 17 years old.
I did, but this is, it all depends on what league and what your pathway is, right? So,
Yeah.
I was growing up in a system at Streatham where at the time they were NIHL one. Well, it was ED1 back then, but it
Yeah,
was
yeah,
NIHL one level, and realistically, the best NIHL one teams were probably, are probably like it's probably a slightly higher level of hockey now than it was back then.
yeah.
And so it was probably more when I was 19. I went to Canada and I played 3 years of junior under 21s hockey out there.
In Toronto, wasn't
Um,
it?
yes, yeah. So
Wow.
and that was huge for my development in terms of sort of learning the game a little bit more, just being on the ice every day and being surrounded in like a hockey culture. It
Yeah.
was yeah, it's sort of yeah. There's so many different nuances in terms of what opportunities you fall into and what is the best development pathway. It really is. Um, yeah, it's a bit of a crapshoot, really.
When you went to Canada, what were the kind of things which really, I guess, prepared you for, well, the career that you then went on to going? Because you were playing in the NIHL one, you played in Canada, and then you played in the Elite League with Cardiff. You played in the EPIHL, which I think was such a competitive league. What were some of the things that you got taught in Canada, and was there any physicality which you were taught back then, which helped you cope then later on in the leagues?
Yeah, like um when I went over to Canada, it was, a lot of there was definitely a bit of an emphasis on, okay, you're a defenseman, you're 6'3", or, bordering on 6'4" at that age at 19.
Yeah,
Wasn't big, or like was pretty skinny still probably. Um, but like not being overly skilled as well. Like I was,
yeah,
like I could do what I needed to do out there. I can make plays and stuff like that. Was pretty savvy, but like I wasn't going to be first like quarterback in a power play my first year in Canada.
yeah,
So a lot of the time there, the coaches are very much okay. Like you have physical attributes that you could bring to be a bit more of an impact, and there is an element of sort of them encouraging you to be tougher, to try and
yeah,
rough it up a little bit and try and um like do other things to help the team win. And
yeah,
at the like being a 19-year-old and actually sort of dipping your toe into that is really, really tough.
yeah,
It's not often. It's sort of one of those things where, like, say you talk like I had my first. I got into a fight. I think when I got into one fight when I played NIHL one before I went.
yeah,
Um, and really, it was like a wrestling match that I
yeah,
sort of accidentally stumbled into with an Oxford player. Um, don't think I ever threw any punches, but I was just
yeah,
sort of like wrestling and stuff. But I was quite big, so I didn't really get in any trouble or anything.
yeah,
Um, and then there was sort of like when I was in Canada, my coach was encouraging me. It's like, all you got to do is just like do it once. You'll see it's not that bad, blah, blah, blah. And then there was one opportunity where one of our guys got hit. We were playing away or something, and I had like my first fight.
yeah.
And again, like I don't really think I threw any punches or nothing really that would have done anything. But it was like
Just
I
happened.
definitely like won the wrestle, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, yeah,
And that was like a bit of a jolt to me to be like, oh, that was kind of fun, and
yeah,
I didn't get hurt, and it was all right. And like you never know you know, like you're always going to be very tentative about it unless you actually sort of get in the mix.
Yeah.
I'm definitely very glad that that's something which I was able to go and do.
Yeah.
You know, it didn't exactly like become like a big part of my game or anything like that at that point. Especially because in later years in Canada, it's like I was a player who was, you know, it's like I was one of the best players on the team. I guess I was captain my last year there and things,
Yeah.
and you know, it was like as well in an under 21s league and stuff like that. There's not, you don't always
It's not too much. Yeah.
like it's not always the best for the team to
Yeah.
be, you know,
I get you.
trying to drag a whole like a really young team into a brawl. You know,
Yeah.
it's not exactly what's best for everyone. So, um, you know, but it's then it was basically like what any reason in my career which I felt like I had to be tough or I had to mix it up or fight was probably because you know I was at a next level where I had to know like I was like I'm going to stick around here or I'm going to do whatever I can to make sure I'm
Yeah.
part of this team or something like that and that's generally why guys do it.
Yeah, I spoke to Tyler Plews about when he was younger and learning in Scotland. And you mentioned there about the physical side in Canada. They don't really teach younger guys as much about grappling and that physical side. Do you really think going to Canada that benefited you, learning that physical side and how to protect yourself, I guess? Because I don't think they do that as much here. They teach you how to take a check and stuff, but they don't really teach you how to grapple.
No, I mean for myself, you know, I I wasn't exactly taught much in the way of like tactics and stuff like that.
Yeah,
It was, you know, it was kind of if you were into it, you might watch a few fight videos or something like that. Like it was just, you know, most of the time, all that stuff just goes out the window anyway. Like
yeah,
only if you've had like probably like lots and lots and lots of fights where you know, a lot of that stuff is, you know, you can actually like practice it and, you know,
yeah,
you can really like hone a craft sort of thing. But, um, you know, it like you probably got to take way more fights than what I've had to
yeah.
be able to, you know, most of the time I just go and just, yeah,
What?
try to inflict a bit more damage than what you take.
So what's some of the reasons then why, for people who maybe don't really understand fighting too much in hockey, what are some of the reasons why you would drop the gloves and how it's an in the moment thing you can't really explain?
Well, so the biggest reason is ice hockey has the potential to be a highly dangerous sport.
Yeah,
Um, and obviously we're talking about fighting, but that's not what I mean in the slightest when I talk about highly dangerous. Like
yeah,
a highly dangerous occurrence is, you know, someone getting hit from behind into boards, which are pretty bloody hard.
yeah,
And if, you know, basically if someone breaks the rules from an opposition team and that results in one of your players being checked and, you know, left in a very vulnerable position where they could potentially have like a really, really bad injury.
yeah,
That's probably the primary reason why fighting has been allowed to exist in ice hockey. For example, if we are playing against each other,
yeah,
if I make an illegal play against one of your teammates,
yeah,
like and something which results in something which could have been like pretty dangerous, like you know, like you know, because in ice hockey, it's like people have had spinal injuries. The amount of concussions is really really high. You know, there's all sorts of really bad injuries that have come from plays which have not been sporting, if you know
yeah,
what I mean.
yeah. I know what you mean.
So by having part of the game where you can come and say to me, you're not going to do anything like that, or I'm going to pound your effing head in, or something like that. And
Yeah,
you have an element of intimidation, knowing that, you know, there's like, because if you don't have that, then you're just down to the will of the referees. or not the will of the referees. Like you're down to the referees to be able to manage the game.
And it can get out of hand.
It can easily get out of hand. And also, what if the referee misses something? And even if the referee does call it, kicks the player out of the game, if you know, if I've been victim of that dangerous play and my career is now over,
Exactly, yeah.
like it's hardly, so I'm generally of the opinion that when fighting was a bigger part of the game, you would probably see less dangerous plays.
Yeah.
Obviously, the other reasons are potentially for tactical, sporting. For example, if there's been times where, we're playing in an opponent's rink, we score 2 quick goals, so they're down 2-0, and they're just looking to get some momentum.
Exactly,
and things aren't going their way. They've like a lot, there's been, and then in which case, for example, they might ask someone from my team to have a fight just to try and rouse the crowd, right?
Yeah.
So in that case, there's no zero animosity in it. It's just, one player on their team who's sort of a bit of who has a responsibility to maybe have a fight every once in a while, asking another player who that's a part of their game, and then you just square off and you have a scrap. And
100%.
Like it's, there's there's definitely less of that now.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily think you need that in the game, because it does make it, it's like, okay, what is the real point to having fighting? It's like I'm a believer that it's, to try and keep things a little bit more honest in a manly way, if you know what I mean, rather than it turning into theatrics or a show and things like that. There's sometimes you get into a fight and you just generally you dislike the other person, and you generally, I just want to fight you or something like that. Or same the other way, right? And having that heat of the battle, that emotion and things like that is, it's like some that is powerful in terms of, like me showing my team that I give a shit as well.
Yeah.
So I
you can swear. Yeah, you can swear.
Okay, cool. And like, if you are so frustrated or your emotions are running so high that you end up getting a fight, like that's a pretty strong signal in terms of where your intentions are, right? And that's another big thing is ice hockey is a game, especially like I'm not sure if you're watching the NHL playoffs, but you were watching
I've been watching
National League playoffs, and it's like playoff hockey, you battle
it's different
all over the
gravy,
ice.
innit?
You have to battle all over the ice, and playoff hockey is by far my favorite time in playing hockey. Like I love like part of the competition of a real tough playoff game is like, well, that was kind of my bread and butter. It's like I wasn't really a fancy skills guy. I was a defensive defenseman and I just love to compete.
Yeah.
And even now it's like if I play at a rec tournament, it's like if I play the 4,000 and counting tournament or something like that, it's like part of me is like, I want to win.
Yeah.
And most other guys are there like hungover from the night before or whatever. This is just like their summer league stuff, and I'm like, no, I don't get to play many competitive games anymore. It's like that's like I don't go out cross-checking guys or anything like that, but
competitiveness within the game.
Yeah, and being able to have that element of of letting your emotions go a little bit.
Yeah.
I think it adds value to the game, definitely,
100%.
and can definitely be a good motivation if you're in one of those games where your team needs a bit of juice.
Needs a bit of momentum. You fought in some big guys. You fought likes of Sam. You fought James Galazzi. I think you fought on Paille as well. I think I've seen that one on YouTube. Do you get nervous going into these? Because some of those guys I just mentioned, I know you're a big lad yourself, but some of those guys are quite tough guys.
there's always people that you don't like, you're potentially a bit apprehensive about tangling with.
Yeah.
Um, Paisley, Paisley was one just because that was
Yeah.
his whole thing. He was like an
He's
elite
a mutant,
fighter.
isn't he?
Yeah, but again, it's sort of like when I did have a fight with him, and trust me, he was trying to fight me lots and lots and lots before I eventually did. And I just didn't really fancy it. Um, and like like he's fought so many times, and also it's like you know like he like that like we all knew it's like that was just what he did,
His thing.
and
Yeah.
if you could just ignore it, you know, it would likely be a bit of a downfall. Not it would be a downfall for the team, but it's like you don't need to get sucked into that because that's exactly what they're trying to do, and that's what they're good at
Exactly. Yeah.
with someone like Pisey. So when I did end up um, having a fight with him, it was actually somewhat. It was another one of those moments where I was like, oh, didn't actually do that bad.
Yeah.
Like, was kind of like it was a bit of a weight on my shoulders, really.
Yeah.
Um, and that's kind of what happens sometimes when you get into these um, get into these fights with these quite formidable people, is you realize actually, it's like
Yeah.
if you can handle yourself okay, then it's not. And at the end of the day, like if it like you know the thing about people like Heisey and a lot of the other fighters that have fought loads is when they're actually like they have respect for you know the sort of unwritten rules that you have
Yeah.
when you're in a hockey fight, so it's like they don't actually want to hurt you, like
No.
really, like they want to win the fight.
Yeah.
But a lot of the guys that are you know that are that have done that lots, like their friends, like they fight, like
Yeah.
they fought against their friends and stuff like that. And
And I think a lot of people from the outside don't see how much respect actually is within it. Obviously, you get the few fights now and again, which are a bit over the top, but respect is a massive part of it, isn't it?
well, it's like you can, it's like having a debate at the end of the day. It's like you could have a different opinion to me,
Yeah.
and it's like we'll say our piece, but at the end of the day, it's like we don't have to like hate each other
No.
or anything like that. And it's like, at the end of the day, it's, kind of like if you have a disagreement with a friend, it gets over the top, you wrestle or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like at the end of the day, it's like you can still be human being. Like it's like I don't want that person to get a catastrophic accident or anything like that.
Yeah.
It's part of a sport, and you know things much like boxers.
Yeah.
Boxers, they are trying to best someone in a boxing match, and if the rules of that boxing match is, you know, part of it is you win by knocking someone out, it's like they're going to try and take that opportunity because
Yeah.
they know that there are going to be measures in place by the rules of the sport which are going to make sure nothing really bad is going to happen to
Yeah.
your opponent or to you if you're on the wrong side of it. So, and
Yeah.
that's very much the same. Like that, it's like in a fight with hockey, if there's ever a time where it's clear that I'm hurt or my opponent's hurt, there's like I don't think most people that are fighting for the right reasons would like continue to try and take
Yeah.
liberties. And in fact, actually, like an interesting story. So while one of the downfalls of me fighting was actually I sustained some shoulder dislocations from a few fights, which derailed my career. So
Mm.
while I'm sort of professing for the benefits of fighting, that's coming from someone that has had pretty bad career-altering injuries from that activity.
I was going to mention that was my next point. So obviously you
Yeah.
talk about the positives of fighting for the team. I've got to bring it up because I was at that game and the fight
Oh
against
yeah.
I was the fight against Sam, and you come off the ice pretty badly hurt, and it wasn't your head, was it at all? It was your shoulder.
No, so
Do you want to, do you
there's
want to talk about that? Because I'd love to hear
yeah,
it from your point of view.
so if you go back to earlier that season, my first game for the Flames, I had a fight with Dek Balmer.
Yep.
And in that game, I believe it was as the refs jumped on top of us, my shoulder dislocates.
Oh,
Um, and that's shoulder dislocations. As soon as you dislocate it once, it's the chance of reoccurrence is very, very common. Um, so I had a long rehab process after that. Um, I think I probably missed 2-3 months of
yeah.
playing. Came back, was playing okay, but I was very much, like couldn't really play quite at
Still
the
on the recovery
capacity.
kind of.
Yeah, like not fully um sort of confident in my body as of yet. And then as it got later on to the season, like it would frustrate me that, it's like that I felt like I couldn't like get in a fight if I needed to, if there was a bad hit or something like that. Like it would really. So there was a time where I felt like I would probably just have to just do it and bite the bullet at
Yeah.
some point. I had a fight against
Yeah.
Galazi,
Galazzi, yeah.
sort of probably early February or something like that, which to be honest was pretty quick, kind
Yeah.
of uneventful. And then I think Bully made some sort of play which I didn't really like
Yeah.
in Swindon. Um, so offered to fight, and then when I throw, I used to always throw righty, so got him grabbed, uh,
Yeah.
got him by the shirt with left hand, and I throw a big punch that kind of knocks it back,
Yep.
and
He knocks down, doesn't he?
and in that moment, the shoulder dislocates.
Oh,
Um, and because naturally, if you get hit with a punch in a fight, your first thing you're gonna do is come back
hit
like
back with the left. Yep.
twice as hard swinging, and I was completely defenseless. I was just
Did you
eating.
know in that moment it had
Yeah,
popped?
yeah. As soon as you're like, is you're yeah, you're just done. And yeah, I was trying to communicate with uh referees, or just basically saying I'm done, I'm done.
Did Sam know or not?
No, no, no. Bless
Oh,
him. He really he had no idea.
yeah.
Um, and the only person that knew actually was Danny Myers, who was a teammate of mine at the time.
Oh,
Um, so that was the reason why the fight ended, was because he sort of like skated in to try and stop it, and it
yeah.
almost started like a line brawl
Yeah,
because you don't
Bully
do that.
didn't know what was happening, and
No,
he
no.
got back up and then gave you a few, but you were down because,
Yeah,
as
yeah,
you
yeah,
said, your shoulder was gone. You couldn't do anything, and
yeah.
then
So
eventually they stepped in, didn't they?
yeah, so as soon as that happened, sort of ref stepped in, eventually broken up. I've like eaten 3 or 4
Yeah, you
right
see on
hands
the
to the
video.
temple because I'm just like I just can't really do anything else. But also at the same time, I can't like I don't want to drop. I can't fall because like
Yeah, it could mess it up
I've got
even
no
more.
support. So then if everyone else like if I drop and then you know Bully and the other and the linos drop, then like
Oh,
God knows what damage that would do.
yeah,
So I was just trying to stand there like just yeah, try not to get hit so much.
yeah.
Um, and then yeah, so then I obviously off the ice, shoulders out. Some Guildford fans, bless them, um, took me
Oh,
to the local hospital in
in
Swindon,
Swindon, yeah.
and they've sort of become sort of sort of friends ever since.
Oh,
And Bully, bless him. So this was like late in the season. This was February. I'm obviously done for the year now at this point.
yeah.
Um, but I saw him at playoff finals weekend, and he made a point of coming up to me and apologising and saying he didn't realise. So and that's that's an example of and I hold absolutely zero animosity towards him. Um, and if anything, like, just have respect that, I know he doesn't, like, he didn't want to see me hurt. Like, I know,
Yeah.
like, I don't know Bully that well personally, but
He's
from
a
that,
really nice guy, yeah.
like, from that interaction, and like Sam Godfrey, who's on my team, is a really good friend of his as well.
Yeah.
Um, he immediately said afterwards, it was like, I know Bully wouldn't mean to do that on purpose.
No.
I was like, dude, it's all good. Like,
Um, so my follow-up question to that is, obviously, you said that did affect you, just over time, get it popping a few times. Do you regret then, having as many fights as you did, or do you think that's just how it played out and that was your role, and you said you enjoyed having that adrenaline sometimes within them?
it's interesting actually. I don't think anyone's asked me that question if
Yeah,
I regret fights. And honestly, like, not in the slightest. And like, you know, the bigger reason to me getting injured was because I physically wasn't it. This is kind of my opinion, but I'm pretty
yeah,
adamant. It's fact. Like, I didn't like in British ice hockey, players aren't really trained that well
yeah,
in terms of off the ice,
yeah,
right? Physically to be like, well, really robust athletes. And I think we're by playing a contact sport and not having a better strength level or robustness and stuff like that from hours and hours of being in the gym training, we're always running a risk of getting hurt.
yeah,
And um, the main thing I would go back and change is I would sort of take the knowledge I have now in regards to strength and conditioning
yeah,
and apply it to my life when I was 12, 13, 14, 15 years old.
yeah,
Because, like my I'm probably in better physical condition to go and have an ice hockey fight than I was when I was a professional ice hockey player.
yeah,
And that's because I've spent years after the fact trying to get my shoulder strong and trying to rehabilitate. Like, I've had two surgeries on this shoulder now. And, it probably wasn't until, I stopped playing,
yeah,
and partly due to COVID hitting and things like that, that I didn't have much else to do other than train myself.
yeah,
Um, but basic strength tests that you do in strength and conditioning, like just being able to, like, little things like being able to do pull-ups or having a good bench press,
yeah,
one rep max. It's like, the stronger you are, the better physical state you're in. It's like that all affects your injury prevention because you have a better ability to handle force. So that's the main thing which I would potentially go back and change. Is I would
yeah,
make sure it's like, if I'm playing pro hockey, I can hit a really good bench number and I'd be able to do pull-ups for days and stuff like that. And that's how I protect my shoulders. It's not trying to
yeah,
avoid fights, because at the end of the day, it's like, if I was doing that, I would have never played at the level which I played at,
yeah,
because I I was going to be a player where I was going to have to battle. And um also, it's like, it's part of helping your teammates.
yeah.
And there's nothing I would change about like I would never want to shy away from helping my teammates, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, and briefly, do you want to just explain basically what you've done since retiring from hockey and how you've actually gone into personal training? It kind of links with what you've just said.
Yeah, so well, yeah, like, I was always very keen on the gym environment and stuff like that while I was playing. Like, I was studying to become a personal trainer when I was 22, 23, playing in Cardiff.
Yeah,
Um, and then, I had always planned that that was going to be like my after hockey life.
yeah. That's
It
good you
that
had a plan, actually.
Well, yeah. I mean, unfortunately, that plan got accelerated a little bit when my shoulder decided to not work anymore.
Oh,
Um, but it's been something which I'm quite proud of, that I've been able to go and sort of apply myself at and get expertise. What I think is, like I've now got a bachelor's degree and a master's degree in it, and might end up doing a PhD someday. So
Nice one.
it's it's like it because of my experiences and the injuries I sustained and being pretty bloody adamant that if young players train the right way, they don't have to go through the same injuries
Yeah.
what I went through and what other players of my generation have gone through. Um, it's quite cool to be able to make a positive impact in that regard. So
Yeah.
it's I guess since stopping, I've now set up my business. Was personal trading, but now I basically just train ice hockey players. So with a company called
Nice.
Train Hockey Smart, which I put together, and now got the I don't know if the podcasters are going to see the video, but I'm
Yeah.
in
Go on.
the gym which
Yeah, looks good.
we have built in Ozone. So this is the Train Hockey Smart HQ, because it's it's going to be the hub for where British hockey players train, hopefully. So
Nice one.
yeah, my big push is to try and sort of change and kickstart a bit of a culture transition for ice hockey players to really um, treat themselves like high level athletes and things like that. And my main motivation around that is because I couldn't do it when I played, and
Yeah.
if I had done it, who knows where I'd be in terms of playing right now. I probably would have been back up in the elite league, potentially. Who knows? So
Yeah.
um, and I know sorry, I'll just keep waffling, but I
No, no,
know
no, it's all good.
what's refreshing is, I know the guys here at Ozone, as well as myself, is like our goal isn't to develop, you know, with all due respect, like NIHL National League ice hockey players. It's like we can raise the standard of British hockey like 100%. It's like we want to
Yeah.
develop
100%.
British NHL players. There's no reason why that shouldn't be happening. So
Yeah.
um, there's a lot of exciting stuff happening in the future, I think.
I'm glad I'm really happy for you actually, because a, a lot of hockey players sometimes don't know what they're going to do after they finish hockey, and it kind of hits home when they retire. And obviously, you retired, I'd say, at a younger age compared to a lot of the
Yeah.
Neil Lydiards of the world we're seeing now,
Yeah.
who's still somehow going. Um,
Yeah.
but I'm really
Credit
glad
to
that you found your niche and can help some future hockey players and current hockey players as well.
Thank you. Really appreciate that. It's fun. I'm very fortunate.
Yeah, and I wanted to finish it off. This was the main question for my project. What would you say to those people then? I know the game's moved on a bit and it's a lot more skill based now, the game of ice hockey, and you're getting some ridiculous youngsters coming through skill level wise. But what would you say to the people who think that fighting should be just removed from hockey and it should just be a skill game, and the physicality should be less?
Um, I think I would. The main thing I would say is there. You have to remember there is a reason why it was there in the first place.
Yeah,
You know, the the reason why it was there in the first place is because to try and as an alternative way to keep the game safe,
yeah,
um, safer than what it could potentially spiral, out of
yeah,
control into. Um, when you have a contained playing field with 10 blokes skating around at high speed, all with baseball bats, basically, there's a lot of potential for things to get out of hand.
yeah,
And, like there's the with any change in a sport, there's always pros and cons.
yeah,
I'm not here to say, I think it would be better if fighting never like, was completely out of the game, or it should be in the game forever or anything like that. Like sport changes. That's
yeah,
just the way life goes. Um, there's, you know, but there's always positive and negative change that comes. Like, for example, there's, players, from what I watch, players are less aware of
Yeah.
how to keep themselves safe
Yeah.
on the ice these days, because there's less fighting, there's less checking, there's, like I sustained probably one borderline minor concussion in my career.
Yeah.
Um, and that was that was because when I was a kid, I knew people were potentially gonna try and take your head off, but they
Yeah.
didn't necessarily want to hurt you. But that was the game. It's like,
Yeah.
if you were on the ice and you were anywhere near the puck, someone's gonna check you.
Yeah.
So you have to protect yourself, and that kind of applies for fighting as well. If you don't want to get in a fight, don't be a dickhead.
Yeah.
Kind of, you know, and the more the fighting is removed, the more people being dickheads might
Might go up.
increase
Yeah.
potentially.
And they
You
kind of
know,
get away with it as well, the little ratty plays. And if fighting's not there, I was speaking to the therapist of the Wildcats, and she was saying that she's had more injuries from those little dirty plays, which retaliation hits, rather than the actual fights themselves. And that's what you're getting at
one,
here.
one, 100%. And it's like it's tricky, because even in the NHL, it's like any big hit results in a fight.
Yeah.
And I feel like back in the day, when fighting was, when you'd had a few players that would just fight all the time,
Yeah.
like, no, a lot of those little plays, or those sort of big checks, it was like they would just be, it's like, should have had your head up. If it's a legal play, you're not really gonna. I mean, maybe if it's like Wayne Gretzky or something like that, that's getting checked,
Yeah.
then you might have a response. But and it's like these days, it's like there's it just turns into sort of a brawl for like a good body check.
Yeah.
And you know that sort of stuff I don't really get.
Yeah.
If I put myself in a vulnerable position, and then someone legally body checks me, and I am like out on my ass, whose fault was it?
You didn't have your head up.
My fault. In that case, I'm the dickhead. So
Yeah.
like that, and that's like, I feel like the game is potentially going towards a way where there's not accountability for players to keep themselves safe.
Do you think
Um,
that's because though, you're getting a lot of these skilled players who are on the puck, and you've still got the few of them players who play that physical game, and that can cause hits. But then because it's one of the most skilled players on the team who's just been hit, the other players then feel like they have to protect him. Do you think that could be a part of it?
yeah, I think, well, I think part of it is when how the game has sort of, there's some organizations and leagues that have sort of gone to like a no a what's it called, like, like if you make head contact, there's no, like,
You're
you're
getting a
kicked
ban.
out, or you're getting a big ban or something like that
Yeah.
if there's head contact, right? So head contact, there's sort of like, you have, the hitter has sole responsibility of head
Yeah.
contact, stuff like that. So does that mean if I'm skating around with my head down and someone hits me, but because I've got my head down, and then they're going to hit my head just by making a normal body check? Like, should that be their fault, or
Mm.
should I have onus on where my head is, and should I be trying to protect my head?
Yeah.
Like, that's kind of how I feel the game is sort of going a little bit. Is, it's like the person getting hit has far more control over where their head is compared to the hitter.
Yeah.
Like, it's so hard to make a decent, well-timed body check.
And because of how quick it is as well now, the game's getting even
So
quicker.
it's so difficult. And watching players that can check well, like Nick Cronwall, for example,
Yeah.
It's like it's just poetry in motion. It's like it's one of my favorite things to watch in the game of hockey. It's like someone that can really like do a hard legal body check like really well and really well timed.
Yeah.
Um, and it's like it's so hard because now if a player catches someone in the head, it's 10 game suspension or something
Yeah.
like that. And it's like that's the way that the leagues are sort of going about trying to reduce head injuries.
Yeah.
And I think it's the completely wrong way to do it. I think raise awareness of what you should be doing on the ice.
Yeah.
But the contrasting view to that is, well, if they actually remove checking entirely,
That won't happen.
then then it potentially allows it to just be a completely skill game, which will be
Yeah.
fast, which will be potentially exciting. And I like checking as part of the game. I think
Yeah.
this is one of the you know
It's
special
again,
arts
it's
of it.
it's it's like you said earlier, it's one of those debates, isn't it? And
Yeah,
I
and
think
I
the
think
people who have been part of the game, like yourself, when back then it was so physical, I think is a contrast to some of these new fans or new people now.
well, it's kind of like football these
Yeah.
days. Like one of my morning rituals or sort of morning evening rituals was getting up watching match of the day, right? Like always wanted to pay attention to what was happening in football, and now it's like to
Yeah.
be honest, I don't really give or like I want Palace to do well because that's sort of like my hometown team and stuff.
Yeah. My dad's a
But
Palace fan, actually.
oh, there you go. Wait, go on the Eagles. Um, but it's like now it's like there's so much diving, there's so much theatrics just about trying to get red, yellow cards for your opposition, trying to earn a free kicks. There's players where their skill in the game is earning fouls.
Yeah, it's
So
embarrassing actually seeing some of that, and then
you
going
know,
watching hockey
and
on a weekend, and you're like, what?
well, even hockey,
Yeah,
like that's become embellishment is a part of the game now. And it's yeah, it's a bit of a shame that that's sort of how it how it's transitioned, and like the football officiating has allowed football to run away with that because they don't punish diving.
yeah,
You could easily have VAR to be like, you clearly dove there, red
yeah,
card or something like that. Like say, okay, we're not diving anymore because you are embarrassing our sport,
yeah,
and like they don't do it because it's gone like quite a way already. So I guess it'll probably be quite hard to implement that. Um, and it's like if you take checking, if you take fighting out of hockey, is there potential for it to move in that sort of direction?
possibly,
Maybe.
yeah.
I don't know.
But hopefully it doesn't go that direction because I'm on the side of you. I still like that physical game, and I know a lot of players who would be gutted. Tyler Plue's one of them if they did remove that element of the game.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Like this, like, like I don't know Tyler that well, but from people that I know that speak of him and stuff like that, like he's another one of those players where he's just someone that likes to battle, compete,
Yeah,
play sort of a bit more of an old school hockey
yeah,
type of game, and it's like trust me, as an ice hockey player, it's like there's not one ice hockey player that wouldn't want that sort of player on your team.
yeah,
As long as they
100%.
weren't like a liability in other ways. Like you always want someone that is going to stick up for people.
Yeah.
Um,
I-
you
I've
know,
got one. I've got one last question then, because I know you've got a little skate in a minute. Um,
yeah,
what is your most memorable fight then that you've had in your career which sticks out to you? If you just had to pick one.
don't know. Other than the injury ones, because they
Yeah,
were
wow,
pretty
yeah,
memorable for the wrong
preferably a
reasons.
positive one where you managed to to get the dub.
Um, yeah, I don't know. There's my first one in Cardiff was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Um, that was against Matt Selby.
Oh yeah. Again, he's another one who non-fighting related, but he had to retire because of
Yeah,
head
yeah,
injuries, and
yeah,
it's
because of concussion issues.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So that was one of my first ones. Um, and just having like 2,000 people just
Oh
start
yeah,
going
in front
going
of Cardiff.
crazy because you're just scrapping with someone. It's pretty cool. One of the most memorable ones was I was actually at like a pro tryout in Canada,
Oh yeah.
and there was a Swiss guy, Nick, who we were friendly with, like
Yeah,
super friendly, like we were all like living together in this program. But because there were scouts there, it was like
you play up a bit.
well, you kind of want to show, like, you want to show scouts what your game is. So if your
Yeah,
game is you fight every once in a while, you kind of got to have a fight in front of them.
yeah.
And Nick was like big like me, like 6'6", and he just someone just asked him to fight, and he just like one punched him like the day before or something like that. And and then and we'd always sort of like joked about scrapping, and and so I said, I was like, look, like, all seriousness, like, there's not many games left. Do you want to go? Because I probably need to show the scouts something. And he was just like, yeah, sure. Um, and before we dropped him, I just said, loser buys the beer after, and like we were gonna go get a meal somewhere. Um, and uh, and then we had like a pretty sick tilt, um, which he probably won because my nose was a little bit bloodied afterwards and stuff like that. But it was also, it was like, two big dudes, and it was like just long reach, both swinging, and it was like, because we were both swinging, we were like spinning around and stuff.
Yeah.
It was kind of crazy. So I bought us a pitcher of beer after,
I,
and
I think I think that's the perfect way to end it, with you just saying you were friendly with the guy and you're able to have a bit of fun with it. Who would lose a
yeah, yeah,
bites of
yeah,
beer, and you still ended
yeah.
up having a full on tilt. And I find that so cool.
Yeah, and we got off the ice afterwards and like hugged and stuff. Like, it was like no animosity towards him or whatever, but it was just, that's just like, when you want something, like in that scenario, what you want is, you want to make a statement for the scouts,
Yeah,
which can potentially, put you on their radar for a pro contract or something.
yeah,
When you want something that much, it's, you'll put your body on the line to get it. That's what rugby players do every bloody day.
yeah,
You know what I
absolutely.
mean. So, it's just, and when you do that, it's like you get such a rush, and it's
Yeah.
exhilarating. It's great. So, um,
Oh.
yeah, credit
Well, I
credit.
appreciate that. Thank you very much, Rupert.
No worries. It
That
was
has helped
fun.
massively, and I'll definitely get this out on the podcast as well as the video I put together. But I'm honestly so happy to see you doing well, and you found your niche after hockey as well.
Cheers, dude. Thank you very much. Really appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Rupert, for joining us. We hope you enjoyed that interview. Really, really little cool stories there. I think from a fighting perspective, that really helped my project. Dan, thanks for joining me. Dad, thanks for joining again.
No problem.
It was a much quieter episode.
No
He'll
worries.
be back. Don't you
Yeah,
A
worry.
lot
he
He'll be
less
will
back.
be
hair
back.
playing as well.
Yeah,
No
yeah, a
hair
lot of less
playing from
hair
us.
fishing as well. But yeah, Charlie will be back. Hopefully there's just as much signings because it
Yeah.
brings us more to talk about. But we have got an interview coming up. We're going to be filming it with Russ Cowley, so that is going to be a really
That'll
good
be
one.
huge.
Him retiring, so I bet he's got loads and loads of stories. So yeah, that one will be coming up. So look out for that one. We hope you've enjoyed this episode, and yeah, we'll see you in the next one. Peace.